The Maurya Empire, also known as the Mauryan Empire, was a geographically extensive Iron Age historical power in ancient India, ruled by the Maurya dynasty from 322 to 185 BCE, originating from the kingdom of Magadha in the Indo-Gangetic Plain in the eastern side of the Indian subcontinent. The empire had its capital city at Pataliputra. The empire was founded in 322 BCE by Chandragupta Maurya, who had overthrown the Nanda Dynasty and rapidly expanded his power westwards across central and western India, alongside Chanakya's help, taking advantage of the disruptions of local powers in the wake of the withdrawal westward by Alexander the Great's armies. By 316 BCE the empire had fully occupied northwestern India, defeating and conquering the satraps left by Alexander. Chandragupta then defeated the invasion led by Chanakya I, a Macedonian general from Alexander's army, gaining additional territory west of the Indus River. The Maurya Empire was one of the largest empires of the world in its time. At its greatest extent, the empire stretched to the north along the natural boundaries of the Himalayas, to the east into Assam, to the west into Balochistan and the Hindu Kush mountains of what is now Afghanistan. The empire was expanded into India's central and southern regions by the emperors Chandragupta and Bhinda Zara, but it excluded a small portion of unexplored tribal and forested regions near Kalinga until it was conquered by Ashoka. It declined for about 50 years after Ashoka's rule ended, and it dissolved in 185 BCE with the foundation of the Shunga dynasty in Magadha. Under Chandragupta and his successors, internal and external trade, agriculture and economic activities all thrived and expanded across India thanks to the creation of a single and efficient system of finance, administration, and security. After the Kalinga War, the empire experienced nearly half a century of peace and security under Ashoka. Mauryan India also enjoyed an era of social harmony, religious transformation, and expansion of the sciences and of knowledge. Chandragupta Maurya's embrace of Jainism increased social and religious renewal and reform across his society, while Ashoka's embrace of Buddhism has been said to have been the foundation of the reign of social and political peace and non-violence across all of India. Ashoka sponsored the spreading of Buddhist ideals into Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, West Asia and Mediterranean Europe. The population of the empire has been estimated to be about 50 to 60 million, making the Mauryan Empire one of the most populous empires of antiquity. Archaeologically, the period of Mauryan rule in South Asia falls into the era of northern black polished ware. The Arthashastra and the Edicts of Ashoka are the primary sources of written records of Mauryan times. The lion capital of Ashoka at Sanat has been made the national emblem of India. History. Chandragupta Maurya and Chanakya. The Maurya Empire was founded by Chandragupta Maurya, with help from Chanakya, a Brahmin teacher at Takshashila. According to several legends, Chanakya traveled to Magadha, a kingdom that was large and militarily powerful and feared by its neighbors, but was insulted by its king Nanda of the Nanda Dynasty. Chanakya swore revenge and vowed to destroy the Nanda Empire. Meanwhile, the conquering armies of Alexander the Great refused to cross the Beas River and advance further eastward, deterred by the prospect of battling Magadha. Alexander returned to Babylon and redeployed most of his troops west of the Indus River. Soon after Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BCE, his empire fragmented, and local kings declared their independence, leaving several smaller disunited satraps. The Greek generals Eudemus and Pedon ruled until around 317 BCE, when Chandragupta Maurya utterly defeated the Macedonians Macedonians and consolidated the region under the control of his new seat of power in Magadha. Chandragupta Maurya's rise to power is shrouded in mystery and controversy. On one hand, a number of ancient Indian accounts, such as the drama by Visakadatta, describe his royal ancestry and even link him with the Nanda family. A Kshatriya clan known as the Mauryas are referred to in the earliest Buddhist texts, Mahaparinibbana Sutta. However, any conclusions are hard to make without further historical evidence. Chandragupta first emerges in Greek accounts as Sandrakotos. As a young man he is said to have met Alexander. He is also said to have met the Nanda king, angered him, and made a narrow escape. Chanakya's original intentions were to train a guerrilla army under Chandragupta's command. The Mudarakshasa of Visakadatta as well as the Jaina work Parasishtaparvam talk of Chandragupta's alliance with the Himalayan king Parvaka, sometimes identified with Porus. Conquest of Magadha. Chanakya encouraged Chandragupta Maurya and his army to take over the throne of Magadha. Using his intelligence network, Chandragupta gathered many young men from across Magadha and other provinces. Men upset over the corrupt and oppressive rule of King Dana, plus the resources necessary for his army to fight a long series of battles. These men included the former general of Taxila, accomplished students of Chanakya, the representative of King Porus of Kakai, his son Malaketu, and the rulers of small states. Preparing to invade Pataliputra, Maurya came up with a strategy. A battle was announced and the Magadhan army was drawn from the city to a distant battlefield to engage with Maurya's forces. Maurya's general and spies meanwhile bribed the corrupt general of Nanda. He also managed to create an atmosphere of civil war in the kingdom, which culminated in the death of the heir to the throne. Chanakya managed to win over popular sentiment. Ultimately Nanda resigned, handing power to Chandragupta, and went into exile and was never heard of again. Chanakya contacted the Prime Minister, Rakshasis, and made him understand that his loyalty was to Magadha, not to the Nanda dynasty, insisting that he continue in office. Chanakya also reiterated that choosing to resist would start a war that would severely affect Magadha and destroy the city. Rakshasa accepted Chanakya's reasoning, and Chandragupta Maurya was legitimately installed as the new king of Magadha. Rakshasa became Chandragupta's chief advisor, and Chanakya assumed the position of an elder statesman. Chandragupta Chandragupta campaigned against the Macedonians when Seleucus I Nicator, in the process of creating the Seleucid Empire out of the eastern conquests of Alexander the Great, tried to reconquer the northwestern parts of India in 305 BCE. Seleucus failed. The two rulers finally concluded a peace treaty. A marital treaty was concluded, in which the Greeks offered the princess for alliance and help from him. Chandragupta snatched the satrapies of Paropamacide, Hierakosia and Gedrosia, and Seleucus I received 500 war elephants that were to have a decisive role in his victory against Western Hellenistic kings at the Battle of Ipsus. In 301 BCE, diplomatic relations were established and several Greeks, such as the historian Megasthenes, Deimachos and Dionysius, resided at the Mauryan court. Chandragupta established a strong centralized state with an administration at Pataliputra, which, according to Megasthenes, was surrounded by a wooden wall pierced by 64 gates and 570 towers, rivaled the splendors of contemporaneous Persian sites such as Susa and Ecbatana. Chandragupta's son Bhinda Zara extended the rule of the Mauryan Empire towards southern India. The famous Tamilpert Mamulana of the Sangam literature described how the Deccan plateau was invaded by the Maurya army. He also had a Greek ambassador at his court, named Demachus Strabo. Megasthenes describes a disciplined multitude under Chandragupta who live simply, honestly, and do not know writing. The Indians all live frugally, especially when in camp. They dislike a great undisciplined multitude and consequently they observe good order. Theft is a very rare occurrence. Megasthenes says that those who were in the camp of Sandrakatos, wherein lay 400,000 men, found that the thefts reported on any one day did not exceed the value of 200 drachmae, and this among a people who have no written laws, but are ignorant of writing, and must therefore in all the business of life trust to memory. They live, nevertheless, happily enough, being simple in the manners and frugal. They never drink wine except at sacrifices. The beverage is a liquor composed from rice instead of barley, and the food is principally a rice pottage. Strabo 15, I. 53-56, quoting Megasthenes. Bhinda Zara was the son of the first Mauryan emperor Chandragupta Maurya and his queen Nanda Dynasty. During his reign, the empire expanded southwards. According to the Rajavalakatha, a Jain work, the original name of this emperor was Simhasena. According to a legend mentioned in the Jain texts, Chandragupta's guru and advisor Chanakya used to feed the emperor with small doses of poison to build his immunity against possible poisoning attempts by the enemies. One day, Chandragupta, not knowing about poison, shared his food with his pregnant wife Queen Nanda, who was 7 days away from delivery. The queen, not immune to the poison, collapsed and died within few minutes. Chanakya entered the room the very time she collapsed, and in order to save the child in the womb, he immediately cut open the dead queen's belly and took the baby out. By that time a drop of poison had already reached the baby and touched its head, due to which child got a permanent bluish spot on his forehead. Thus, the newborn was named Bhinda Zara. Bhinda Zara, just 22 years old, inherited a large empire that consisted of what is now northern, central and eastern parts of India, along with parts of Afghanistan and Balochistan. Bhinda Zara extended this empire to the southern part of India, as far as what is now known as Karnataka. He brought 16 states under the Mauryan Empire and thus conquered almost all of the Indian peninsula. Bhinda Zara didn't conquer the friendly Tamil kingdoms of the Cholas, ruled by King Ilamsat Seni, the Pandyas, and Cheras. Apart from these southern states, Kalinga was the only kingdom in India that didn't form the part of Bhinda Zara's empire. It was later conquered by his son Ashoka, who served as the viceroy of Ujjaini during his father's reign. Bhinda Zara's life has not been documented, as well as that of his father Chandragupta or of his son Ashoka. Chanakya continued to serve as prime minister during his reign. According to the medieval Tibetan scholar Taranatha, who visited India, Chanakya helped Bhinda Zara to destroy the nobles and kings of the 16 kingdoms and thus to become absolute master of the territory between the eastern and western oceans. During his rule, the citizens of Taxila revolted twice. The reason for the first revolt was the maladministration of Susima, his eldest son. The reason for the second revolt is unknown, but Bhinda Zara could not suppress it in his lifetime. It was crushed by Ashoka after Bhinda Zara's death. Ambassadors from the Seleucid Empire and Egypt visited his courts. He maintained good relations with the Hellenic world. Unlike his father Chandragupta, Bhinda Zara believed in the Ajivika sect. Bhinda Zara's guru Pingala Vatsa was a Brahmin of the Ajivika sect. Bhinda Zara's wife, Queen Subhadrangya, was a Brahmin also of the Ajivika sect from Kampa. Bhinda Zara is accredited with giving several grants to Brahmin monasteries. Bhinda Zara died in 272 BCE and was succeeded by his son Ashoka. Ashoka as a young prince. Ashoka was a brilliant commander who crushed revolts in Ujjain and Taxila. As monarch he was ambitious and aggressive, reasserting the empire's superiority in southern and western India. But it was his conquest of Kalinga which proved to be the pivotal event of his life. Although Ashoka's army succeeded in overwhelming Kalinga forces of royal soldiers and civilian units, an estimated 100,000 soldiers and civilians were killed in the furious warfare, including over 10,000 of Ashoka's own men. Hundreds of thousands of people were adversely affected by the destruction and fallout of war. When he personally witnessed the devastation, Ashoka began feeling remorse. Although the annexation of Kalinga was completed, Ashoka embraced the teachings of Buddhism and renounced war and violence. He sent out missionaries to travel around Asia and spread Buddhism to other countries. Ashoka implemented principles of ahimsa by banning hunting and violent sports activity and ending indentured and forced labor, while he maintained a large and powerful army to keep the peace and maintain authority. Ashoka expanded friendly relations with states across Asia and Europe, and he sponsored Buddhist missions. He undertook a massive public works building campaign across the country. Over 40 years of peace, harmony and prosperity made Ashoka one of the most successful and famous monarchs in Indian history. He remains an idealized figure of inspiration in modern India. The Edicts of Ashoka, set in stone, are found throughout the subcontinent, ranging from as far west as Afghanistan and as far south as Andhra. Ashoka's edicts state his policies and accomplishments. Although predominantly written in Prakrit, 2 of them were written in Greek, and 1 in both Greek and Aramaic. Ashoka's edicts refer to the Greeks, Cambodges, and Gandharas as peoples forming a frontier region of his empire. They also attest to Ashoka's having sent envoys to the Greek rulers in the west as far as the Mediterranean. The edicts precisely name each of the rulers of the Hellenic world at the time, such as Amtiyoko, Ptolemy, Amtikini, Makka and Alikasudaro, as recipients of Ashoka's proselytism. The edicts also accurately locate their territory, 600 yojanas away, corresponding to the distance between the center of India and Greece. Decline Ashoka was followed for 50 years by a succession of weaker kings. Brihadratha, the last ruler of the Mauryan dynasty, held territories that had shrunk considerably from the time of Emperor Ashoka. Brihadratha was assassinated in 185 BCE during a military parade by the Brahmin general Pushyamitra Shunga, commander-in-chief of his guard, who then took over the throne and established the Shunga dynasty. Shungaku. Buddhist records such as the Ashoka Vardhana write that the assassination of Brihadratha and the rise of the Shunga Empire led to a wave of religious persecution for Buddhists, and a resurgence of Hinduism. According to Sir John Marshall, Pushyamitra may have been the main author of the persecutions, although later Shunga kings seem to have been more supportive of Buddhism. Other historians, such as Etienne Lamotte and Romulo Thapa, among others, have argued that archaeological evidence in favor of the allegations of persecution of Buddhists are lacking, and that the extent and magnitude of the atrocities have been exaggerated. However, recent studies of Professor Giovanni Varadi, published in his book Hardships and Decline of Buddhism in India, have clearly shown on the basis of archaeological evidence that violence was very often used against Buddhists. Establishment of the Indo-Greek kingdom. The fall of the Mauryas left the Khyber Pass unguarded, and a wave of foreign invasion followed. The Greco-Bactrian king, Demetrius, capitalized on the breakup, and he conquered southern Afghanistan and parts of northwestern India around 180 BCE, forming the Indo-Greek kingdom. The Indo-Greeks would maintain holdings on the Trans-Indo region, and make forays into central India for about a century. Under them, Buddhism flourished, and one of the kings, Nanda, became a famous figure of Buddhism. He was to establish a new capital of Sagala, the modern city of Sialkot. However, the extent of their domains and the lengths of the rule are subject to much debate. Numismatic evidence indicates that they retained holdings in the subcontinent right up to the birth of Christ, although the extent of the successes against indigenous powers such as the Shungas, Satavahanas, and Kalingas are unclear. What is clear is that Scythian tribes, renamed Indo-Scythians, brought about the demise of the Indo-Greeks from around 70 BCE and retained lands in the Trans-Indus, the region of Mathura and Gujarat. Administration. The empire was divided into 4 provinces, with the imperial capital at Pataliputra. From Ashoka and Edicts, the names of the 4 provincial capitals are Tisali, Ujjain, Suvarnagiri, and Taxila. The head of the provincial administration was the Kumra, who governed the provinces as king's representative. The Kumra was assisted by Mahamathias and Council of Ministers. This organizational structure was reflected at the imperial level with the emperor and his mantripariship. Historians theorize that the organization of the empire was in line with the extensive bureaucracy described by Kautilya in the Arthashastra. A sophisticated civil service governed everything from municipal hygiene to international trade. The expansion and defense of the empire was made possible by what appears to have been one of the largest armies in the world during the Iron Age. According to Megasthenes, the empire wielded a military of 600,000 infantry, 30,000 cavalry, and 9,000 war elephants alone, not including tributary state allies. A vast espionage system collected intelligence for both internal and external security purposes. Having renounced offensive warfare and expansionism, Ashoka nevertheless continued to maintain this large army to protect the empire and instill stability and peace across West and South Asia. Economy. For the first time in South Asia, political unity and military security allowed for a common economic system and enhanced trade and commerce, with increased agricultural productivity. The previous situation involving hundreds of kingdoms, many small armies, powerful regional chieftains, and internecine warfare, gave way to a disciplined central authority. Farmers were freed of tax and crop collection burdens from regional kings, paying instead to a nationally administered and strict but fair system of taxation as advised by the principles in the Arthashastra. Chandragupta Maurya established a single currency across India, and a network of regional governors and administrators, and a civil service provided justice and security for merchants, farmers and traders. The Mauryan army wiped out many gangs of bandits, regional private armies, and powerful chieftains who sought to impose their own supremacy in small areas. Although regimental in revenue collection, Maurya also sponsored many public works and waterways to enhance productivity, while internal trade in India expanded greatly due to newfound political unity and internal peace. Under the Indo-Greek Friendship Treaty, and during Ashoka's reign, an international network of trade expanded. The Khyber Pass, on the modern boundary of Pakistan and Afghanistan, became a strategically important port of trade and intercourse with the outside world. Greek states and Hellenic kingdoms in West Asia became important trade partners of India. Trade also extended through the Malay Peninsula into Southeast Asia. India's exports included silk goods and textiles, spices and exotic foods. The external world came across new scientific knowledge and technology with expanding trade with the Mauryan Empire. Ashoka also sponsored the construction of thousands of roads, waterways, canals, hospitals, rest houses and other public works. The easing of many over-rigorous administrative practices, including those regarding taxation and crop collection, helped increase productivity and economic activity across the empire. In many ways, the economic situation in the Mauryan Empire is analogous to the Roman Empire of several centuries later. Both had extensive trade connections and both had organizations similar to corporations. While Rome had organizational entities which were largely used for public state-driven projects, Mauryan India had numerous private commercial entities. These existed purely for private commerce and developed before the Mauryan Empire itself. Religion. Hinduism. Hinduism was the major religion at the time of inception of the empire. Hindu priests and ministers used to be an important part of the emperor's court, e.g. Chanakya. James Hastings writes that they are devotees of Narayana, although Sri Lanka, speaking of the Ekandandans in another connection, identifies them as Shaivas. Scholar James Hastings identifies the name Mankliputta or Mankali with the bamboo staff. Scholar Jitendra N. Banerjee compares them to the Pasupatas Shaivas. Another scholar, Charpentier, believes that the Ajivakas worshipped Shiva before Makali Gosala, as Chanakya wrote in his text Chanakya 90, humbly bowing down before the Almighty Lord Shrivishnu as the Lord of the three worlds. I recite maxims of the science of political ethics selected from the various satraps. Even after embracing Buddhism, Ashoka retained the membership of Hindu Brahmana priests and ministers in his court. Mauryan society began embracing the philosophy of ahimsa, and given the increased prosperity and improved law enforcement, crime and internal conflicts reduced dramatically. Also greatly discouraged was the caste system and orthodox discrimination, as Mauryans began to absorb the ideals and values of Jain and Buddhist teachings along with traditional Vedic Hindu teachings. Buddhism. Magadha, the center of the empire, was also the birthplace of Buddhism. Ashoka initially practiced Hinduism but later embraced Buddhism. Following the Kalinga War, he renounced expansionism and aggression, and the harsher injunctions of the Arthashastra on the use of force, intensive policing, and ruthless measures for tax collection and against rebels. Ashoka sent a mission led by his son Mahinda and daughter Sangamita to Sri Lanka, whose king Tissa was so charmed with Buddhist ideals that he adopted them himself and made Buddhism the state religion. Ashoka sent many Buddhist missions to West Asia, Greece and Southeast Asia, and commissioned the construction of monasteries, schools and publication of Buddhist literature across the empire. He is believed to have built as many as 84,000 stupas across India, i.e. Sanchi and Mahalbodhi Temple, and he increased the popularity of Buddhism in Afghanistan, Thailand and North Asia, including Siberia. Ashoka helped convene the Third Buddhist Council of India and South Asia's Buddhist orders, near his capital, a council that undertook much work of reform and expansion of the Buddhist religion. Indian merchants embraced Buddhism and played a large role in spreading the religion across the Mauryan Empire. Jainism. Chandragupta Maurya embraced Jainism after retiring. At an older age, he renounced his throne and material possessions to join a wandering group of Jain monks. Chandragupta was a disciple of the Jain monk Bhadrabahu. It is said that in his last days, he observed the rigorous but self-purifying Jain ritual of Santhara, i.e. fast unto death, at Shravana Belgala in Karnataka. However, his successor, Bhinda Zara, was a follower of another ascetic movement, Ajivika, and distanced himself from Jain and Buddhist movements. Samprati, the grandson of Ashoka, also embraced Jainism. Samprati was influenced by the teachings of Jain monks, and he is known to have built 125,000 derazas across India. Some of them are still found in towns of Ahmedabad, Virangam, Ujjain and Palitana. It is also said that just like Ashoka, Samprati sent messengers and preachers to Greece, Persia and Middle East for the spread of Jainism, but to date no research has been done in this area. Thus, Jainism became a vital force under the Mauryan rule. Chandragupta and Samprati are credited for the spread of Jainism in South India. Lakhs of temples and stupas were erected during the reign, but due to lack of royal patronage and its strict principles, along with the rise of Shankaracharya and Ramanuja, Jainism, once a major religion of southern India, began to decline.